All right, here we are. I got Spencer Tatum and Dan O'Brien. Welcome to the future of fitness, gentlemen.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, very exciting.
Good to see you again, Eric.
Yeah, Spencer. I guess, man, as we were chatting before the interview here, there's so many things that we could easily dive into and cover 4 hours of interview time between you guys. And, especially Dan, people who don't know you, just first of all, maybe hit pause, go to Dan O'Brien's Wikipedia page, read a little bit, and then we can get into the finer details in this interview. And then Spencer, you and I have known each other for, I guess, about a decade now, thanks to James Fitzgerald over at OPEX. We got connected through that educational process. And we've been kind of watching each other evolve within the fitness and sports industry. So it's great to get you back on the interview, and people can go back and listen to another one that I did with Spencer about 2 years ago. So let's start with this. Maybe Spencer, let's start with you. We'll give a little bit of your background, and Dan, we'll dive into yours as well, so people can get familiarized before we get into what you guys are doing with Legacy.
Sure. Spencer Tatum, founder of THP and president, and oversees all performance. I got my degree in exercise physiology. I was a college athlete, played D1 football at Ohio University, but originally from Lafayette, Louisiana, and was, used sport as my vertical to overcome my challenges of dyslexia and dysgraphia. And then along that pathway, had some success. And then there's this little injury bug that kept nipping at me. There were non-contact injuries that no one could explain. So ever since then, we've just been on a search of okay, why is that? What's going on? Because according to the NSCA model or, the textbook model, that shouldn't have happened. Resilient, strong, fast, hit all the milestone markers you wanted. And, no one could really explain why this is happening. So through that, I was able to have some really great connections and got to meet, a great guy like Dan O'Brien and be able to learn and listen to some of the great things that he's done and how everything has worked. And now we've connected, and we've got this dynamic project going on, Legacy Sports. We're building the largest sports park in the United States, and Dan's been a part of it for 30 years. And, it's just been an honor and blessing to be a part of it.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you for that, Spencer. That was great. Now, Dan, I grew up a child of the 90s. I remember you well, and I know you are you're not a novice when it comes to being interviewed, for sure. You've probably been done thousands and thousands of interviews. So it's great to have you on the show. And for maybe people who aren't familiar with your background in decathlete gold medalists and just the way you went about it from 92 hitting that major, I'll let you describe it, and then 96 seeing great success. It was inspirational as a young athlete to watch you go. So give us your background in your words, and then, we'll go from there, man.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And, Spencer, it's good to see you. I know we see each other quite a bit every day, but always in person, rarely on the screens like this. So I grew up in Southern Oregon. My first introduction to sports was Little League Baseball. When I was in the 4th grade, my dad got me a mitt and a ball, and away I went. And, I tell people, especially my track and field story, that the first race I ever ran, I won. I just, in the 5th grade, I entered a cross country meet and just took off and I just remember the thrill of competing, the thrill of, just racing to get to the front and kind of outlasting everybody. And as a kid growing up, I just, I was a poor student. I was a bad reader, but man, I was good at sports, and I was always the fastest kid in school. And I took a lot of pride in that, just because I wasn't good at a lot of other things. And sports really helped me create and, kind of find my own identity. As an athlete growing up, all I ever wanted to do was just be good enough to play. And when I was good enough to play, all I wanted to do was start. I wasn't the kind of kid who, in the 6th grade said, I'm going to go play in the NFL or anything. I just wanted to wear the varsity uniform. And so my progression in sports was always just a little step at a time. And I kind of make a joke, but I think my mom made a deal with the athletic gods. It just said, don't give him anything until he's worked for it. because everything came to me really slowly. It was a real slow process to get a little bit better and grind it out just a little bit longer. But I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Idaho and get connected with a great guy by the name of Mike Keller, even though I had some struggles in college, academically and just socially. I kind of lost my way in college. I was able to get some great guidance from Coach Mike Keller, who convinced me that I could be an Olympian. And these kinds of people are really hard to find. Certainly there was nobody telling me that when I was growing up, but he convinced me with, dedication and hard work that I was going to, that I could get a shot at going to the Olympic Games. And, as I got a little bit older, I understood how important it was for me to surround myself with people that shared the same vision and goals. And I was, I grew up, when I got in the sport of track and field, it was a natural progression to me. I played football in high school and basketball as well. I think I could have played college football, but track and field just came so naturally. But as I made the transition from college, trying to go to the Olympic Games, I started to add pieces to my team. And one individual that I added to my team was Rick Sloan. He was a 1968 Olympic athlete in the decathlon. He's from Southern California, but he was the head coach at Washington State University at the time. And as soon as he came on board, it changed everything for me. I was a good athlete in college. But it was only a year or two post-collegiately that I was a great decathlete. And I think I owe that a lot to my coaches. But I had a lot of success early on. I got second place at the Goodwill Games in 1990, which was really my first big international competition. I always trailed Dave Johnson the first couple of years in my career. And Dave and I would go on to do Dan and Dave commercials in 1992. But having Dave there, somebody who I was chasing, somebody who I was trying to, emulate and be like, was really important for me. But I managed to win a world championship in 1991, and that was just a huge breakthrough for me. I broke the American record, Bruce Jenner's longstanding American record, and had the highest score in the world that the world had seen probably in the last 5 or 6 seasons. And I was all set up to go to the Olympic Games in Barcelona. And I was so set up that Reebok sponsored both Dave Johnson and I. We did a series of commercials. We became commercial stars overnight. And I proceeded to go to the Olympic trials, not make the Olympic team, and I had to miss out on the Barcelona Olympics. And, I think at the time when people look at it, they look at it just as a huge failure, as a big tragedy. But as an athlete, you're every bit as prepared to fail as you are to succeed. And, I did a lot of losing growing up, whether it was Little League baseball or high school football or basketball, even track and field. I took the losses as well as I took the wins. And so I had to recover from that. And I managed to then string together probably 4 of the most successful decathlon years in the history of track and field. I won world championships in 93, 95, Goodwill Games in 94, broke the American record 2 more times. And it all kind of led me indoor world records in both the 5-event, 7-event. That loss though in 92, I just think, just took me to another level. And I think more than anything, it made me a more responsible athlete. Up until that point, I did what my coaches told me to do. But after I lost and didn't make that Olympic team, I took it upon myself to just challenge myself, but have a higher expectation than those people around me. And I just became a much better athlete, and I was ready for the rain and the wind and anything that snow, anything that might come along. And I just was so driven going into the 96 Olympics. There was nothing for me in 96 except for the Olympic gold. And so, in a nutshell, that's kind of my athletic story. There were, lots of other little stories in there, but, I love sports. I fell in love with the Olympics when I was a kid. When I saw that 1980 Olympic hockey team, I always said to myself, it's like, if I got a chance to wear that USA uniform, it would be a dream come true. And I got that opportunity, and I'll never forget, putting on my first USA uniform, and certainly wearing the USA uniform at the Olympics was very, very special.
Right on, man. What a badass story. So one of the questions I want to go back to, because I'm curious about it, when 91, 92, when they started the Dan and Dave campaigns, I remember that distinctly. What was it like being, track and field is not compared to the big 4, right? football, basketball, baseball, hockey. It's not a well-known sport, but all of a sudden you got thrust into the public eye and you became literally a household name, right? What was that transition? And then, then you subsequently, kind of stayed in the limelight for a while after that. But what was that point in life like? Like, were you just shocked that people knew you when you walked around, you're in the supermarket or whatever? Like, how did you transition into that?
Well, it was shocking. Like you just said, nothing could have prepared me for what I was going to see and really go through. Reebok came to Dave and I one day and just said, "Hey, look, we've got this idea. We're going to take 2 unknown guys in an unknown event and present them to the United States and try to get into a market, a new shoe market that we're not very familiar with." And so Reebok was, they built cross-training shoes. And Reebok was basically known at that time for, casual shoes, just a little bit of athletic shoes, but they wanted to break into the running and the training market. And they used Dan and Dave to do that. And, when they originally brought it to us, Dave and I thought, you guys are crazy. First of all, neither one of us had made the Olympic team. And then secondly, it's like, who cares about the decathlon? When you were competing in a decathlon, at 9 a.m. at the U.S. championships, you're lucky if there were 50 people watching you. It was everybody's family that just showed up, your girlfriend and some family members. But all of a sudden, the Dan and Dave commercials come out, and it was everybody in the town of Moscow, Idaho, where I was living. They knew me, but now they knew where I lived and they knew everything about me. But, people around the country, really got to know us as well. And I make a joke, I talk to some young track and field athletes and I tell them, we sat courtside at the Laker games. We signed autographs at Dick's Sporting Goods for hours. We were so famous. We were on the Arsenio Hall show. Yeah. Kids look at me like, who's Arsenio Hall? Right. And it's like, man, he was big back in the day.
He was huge,
but it was shocking. And I think what we experienced was what Michael Jordan and Bo Jackson got to experience on a regular basis. And I thought to myself, it's like, wow, this is what it's like for an NFL star. This is what it's like for an NBA star. And, there were some adjustments to be made, certainly. But I think one thing that was really clear through it all was, no matter what happens around you, you still got to train. You still got to put that time in, and you got to be prepared for your moment. And I almost look at that time in our lives like Dave and I were like the first reality stars, because what we were doing was real, and I think it's like, that thing would still be alive today if social media were going at the time.
Yeah. And it must have put so much pressure on you too. Like you said, you hadn't even officially made the Olympics yet, right? And they were propping up the stars. I mean, there had to be a ton of expectation there for you.
There were, but I think the expectation for me, and when I say us and we as my team, is just like, our expectation is to win the Olympic gold medal. And I don't know if there's a higher expectation than that. There was rarely ever a day when I thought, I got to get out here and train because I'm in these commercials. No, I was out there grinding it out and training because, man, I'm trying to win a gold medal. I'm trying to follow in the footsteps of, Bruce Jenner and Bill Toomey and Bob Mathias and guys like that. So I don't ever think that the pressure was that commercial put more pressure on me than I put on myself. Maybe at the Olympic trials on my third attempt, I felt pressure, but you don't ever expect to be there in that moment, up for your third attempt at your opening height in the Olympic trials.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure we get into what you guys are doing now with the new project. And this is kind of a fun question. Maybe we can segue in. But this is like a conversation I'll have with some buddies over a beer. Like, out of all sports, right? All events, who produces the best athletes? I think the decathlon. I think all around, like, the best athlete has to be the decathlon, right? I mean, look at everything that you do. I mean, maybe can you just quickly list all 10 things that you guys do? Because it's amazing. And I don't even know how you would have time in the day to train for all those things.
Well, it takes a clever person who's done it before. And I had a coach who was a decathlete, so he understood the training for it. But the decathlon's 10 events over 2 days. The 100 meters long jump, shot put, high jump, and the 400 meters on day one. and then, come back, you're a little sore, tired.
Yeah, I bet.
110 meter high hurdles, discus, pole vault, javelin, and the 1500. And it certainly, I can remember, doing the decathlon in high school. It wasn't my first choice. It wasn't my favorite choice. If I would have had the career that I really wanted, it would have been, I want to be like Carl Lewis. I want to run the 100 meters and long jump and be in the glamour events. But the decathlon was one of those events that just kept presenting itself. And I was a good hurdler. I was a good long jumper, but I wasn't the best in the US. I wasn't world class at that time, but the decathlon just kept presenting itself. And I challenged myself against, some of the other standards. I remember FloJo ran 10:46. And I said, for me to be a great decathlete, I got to at least run faster than FloJo. And the next year I absolutely did. So, it is a tough event. And I always look at the decathletes, and there've been a number of decathletes who I think would, we get the title of the world's greatest athlete because of Jim Thorpe back in the 1912 Olympics. But Michael Smith from Canada, who was a guy who I competed against, said it better than anybody. He said, to be a great athlete, to be the best, you have to be the best runner, jumper, and thrower. And essentially that describes a decathlete. And so, you might say that there's some defensive backs or some guys in the NBA who are the best athletes in the world, but to run, jump, and throw better than anybody else in the world allows you to call yourself the world's greatest athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Spencer, what do you think?
if you really think about it, Dan's times, right, we're almost there to compete in the best in the world in those events, right? Especially the hurdles and the 400 and long jump. They were stellar, right? 10.3. Come on. That's, by the way, that's accurate laser track. So that means it's like 10.1 hand time, 10 flat. So on that, but it's if you really think about it, it's the original CrossFit Games before the CrossFit Games were even there. It was, really who is the fittest and most well-rounded person that can move in 3D and not just in a sagittal plane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. I still think it is. And I was going to bring up the how you can compare it to the CrossFit Games, because that's exactly what they claim. And I'm a long-standing CrossFit guy, right? I've been doing it for a long time. I started, back in 2008 when they came out with the games, are like fittest on earth. I was like, I got a question. I'm like, I kind of think decathletes are probably the fittest people. Just like doing the mile at the end of those 2 days, doing a mile for time makes you want to vomit, right? And having to do that after 9 events where you're just completely exhausted, the pain tolerance to be able to push through that okay. Yeah. Let me just ask you about that mile. When you're coming to the end of the event, right? You're on your 10th event in the decathlon, and you just got to balls out run a mile, right? Obviously to your particular strategy, because you know to run a mile. But man, are you thinking, like, just get me through this, or this is my shot, or after this, I'm going to just sit in a hot tub for 4 days? Like, what's going on in your head?
Well, by the time you get to the 1500 meters, the start line, you're happy that you're that far. You're happy that you got through the 9 events and you've made it through 2 days of competition, and you're kind of excited to get to the line so you can finish this thing. But that 1500 is something you start thinking about 2 days, 3 days before. It's like, oh, here it comes. It's at the end, because it is difficult. It's physically challenging. You're going to be exhausted. It takes place late at night during a major championship. I ran all my meters at nighttime, in major championships, but it was something that I wasn't good at. And it was my least favorite event, even though I grew up running cross country. I started track and field and distance running. The 1500 was just, my VO2 max was just not as good as a lot of other guys. And it's an event that a lot of coaches just think your general training can take care of it. But for me to be good at the distance running, I needed to really put a focus on it, concentrate on it. And that was just to be an average decathlete. A lot of people give me a hard time because they think I just kind of, moderately ran hard in the 1500 meters, but I had my moments. I had to run a good 1500 meters to break the world record. I had to run a great 1500 meters to win my second world title. I had to run a solid 1500 meters to bring home the Olympic gold. I ran better long distance races indoors. I ran 240 for the 1,000 meters indoors in a pentathlon and a heptathlon. And, that was when I really trained throughout the winter. But no, the 1500 meters is no fun. But not only that, there's a comparison embarrassment model as well, because you see the world-class guys go 335, 336, and then all of a sudden the decathletes go out and they run 5 minutes and it looks like we're jogging. And people just like, oh, come on, you can run faster than that. Yeah, I challenge anybody, go out and try to run a 5-minute mile. And just even try to start off at the pace of a 5-minute mile, you'll understand how fast it really is.
Yeah, it's fast. I mean, my fastest, I checked off the sub 6 mile like 7 years ago. I'm like, okay, that's it. That's all I need for the rest of my life. I'm good. And I felt like I was flying right in that time. And these times are so fast. It's ridiculous. Wow, man. Wow. Okay. Well, let's get into what you guys are doing now. So you guys are working on this tremendous project, right? In the Arizona, Phoenix, Scottsdale area. But let's get into that. First of all, I guess, how did you guys team up to start working on this project? What's the origin story of it?
Well, I'll kind of set it up. The Legacy Sports Park, which is newly named Bellbank Park, is located in East Mesa. We're just right across Ellsworth Road, which is one of the busiest roads in the state of Arizona, from Mesa Gateway Airport. So it's East Mesa. And I remember when I first moved to the Valley 20 years ago, there was nothing out there. Queen Creek wasn't out there, and Mesa didn't go that far east. But I connected. I moved to the Valley in 1998. Moved here full time 2000. I connected with Randy Miller. Randy J. Miller was just a sports dad. He had a son who played baseball. He had a son who played basketball, and they were elite players. They played on club teams, and I trained both of his sons. I did speed training with them, and I got to know Randy pretty well. And Randy came to me one day and said, "Man, I got this idea, about I want to build this 50-acre sports park, and I want to put baseball and soccer." And at the time, I remember being here in the Valley that there just wasn't enough fields. There wasn't enough field space for kids to play soccer. There was, high schools were leasing out their fields to club teams. And so the idea, made sense to me. And so I worked with Randy and his team. We came up with some ideas. We had athletes like Matt Williams, and I remember Brandy Chastain were in on it. And then, 3 or 4 years would cycle through, and those athletes would be out, and we bring new athletes in, Eddie Johnson, and we wanted to plug a professional athlete in with each sport. But over the years, the idea just grew and grew and grew. And Disney had started and had really created a great model on the East Coast. And we wanted something on the West Coast. And we tried for years to get it funded. And it wasn't until 2019, that we were able to fund the sports park. And we had it funded. We had the land, and so we broke ground about a year and a half ago. We looked to open Bellbank Park in January, and through all of the planning, I knew that this park needed performance training, and that performance training could be the hub in the middle of all these different sports. So I wanted to train all those soccer players, all those baseball players, basketball, volleyball. And I always had an idea who I wanted to be my strength and conditioning coach. It was a guy that I worked with here. But it just so happened that I wasn't able to work with him, and I was fortuitous enough to be introduced to Spencer. And I'm really glad that it turned out this way, because, my last partner in the performance area, he was a fantastic coach, but now I meet Spencer, who's not only fantastic, but he's a great businessman. He has one of the most comprehensive performance programs that I've seen anywhere in the country. And I've been in some of the best, college weight rooms, professional weight rooms, and, seen a lot of areas and gyms and performance programs around the country. So he and I got connected. I'm going to say we've probably been working together for 6 or 7 months, which just isn't long enough to put a project like this together. But he and his team have managed to do a really great job. And I feel grateful that he's partnered, THP has partnered with Legacy and Bellbank Park to be our performance directors.
Right on. Kudos to you, Spencer, man. So tell me what is the project? What is the vision? I mean, you alluded to a lot of it, Dan, but this is, from what I understand, it's going to be one of the biggest collective sports facilities in the country, right? I mean, it's a huge endeavor. So maybe Spencer, you can walk us through the vision of this thing, man.
Well, I mean, it's really off Randy's dream on what he saw this big need in the market of one, these kids are going to all these games and events, and then like game ends, and now what do you do? Like the parents don't know where to go. They don't have experience. And the other side of it was that it was just all about facilities. It wasn't really about the kid. It wasn't about the athlete. It wasn't about them. And so, the Millers and Dan and, we all had in THP, we had the same vision, was really create this dynamic experience. And that's been the whole thing. It's like, it's the largest sports park. It's 320 acres big. I think Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be 5 million people there per year visiting and 30,000 per weekend. I mean, it's going to be incredible. Everything from, soccer field, stadium, baseball, basketball, volleyball, pickleball, training, golf simulators, performance center. It's insane, but it's all going to work in unison. The one great thing they've done is that they brought on a guy, Rodney Rees, who's the former GM of the Wide World of Sports, to help orchestrate this orchestra. So it's going to be pretty dynamic. And what we're trying to do, and Dan and I, when we got together, we started talking, was no one's really done a performance model on scale, right? It's been a lot of run people through the gauntlet, or just, you run them through speed and agility, cone drills, or ladders, but no one's really developed an athlete. And I always remember I asked Dan, what did he really want to do? And he wanted to rebuild a decathlete in his garage, where he can tune them up and fine tune them. And I think that's one of the goals we really want to do, is have that, along with having the youth development model done right here in the United States.
Yeah. Awesome. So it's a huge complex, right? I mean, like you said, 320 acres. I would imagine it's going to be one of the more advanced as well. Give us some insights into, not just from the, traditional sports facilities of having the fields and the weight rooms and things like that, but what are you guys looking at to make this thing, more cutting edge and being, I guess, a beacon of what is possible?
Well, I'll just run you through the different areas, and then I'll let Spencer talk about some of the things we're doing in the performance center. But 320 acres. All right. So we've got 24 soccer fields. We've got 41 pickleball courts, and it's amazing. USA Pickleball approached us and said, we said, hey, we want to do some pickleball courts. And they said, Gene, we need you to do more than that. We want to host the US championships at your facility in 2 years time, 3 years time. So we built a lot of pickleball courts, and we've got a dozen sand volleyball courts outside. We've only got 8 baseball fields, 8 baseball, softball fields. And people say, well, why don't you have more? I think we need more, but there are a lot of baseball fields here in Arizona. It's one sport that, kids do play 365 days out of the year, but we've got almost 1 million square feet of indoor court space. And that's volleyball, basketball, futsal. And then in the areas that Spencer and I work in together, we got 50,000 square feet of performance, medical, and general fitness. And, I think some of the interesting things that you're going to see at Legacy Sports Park, Bell Bank Park, is every field is going to have live streaming capabilities. So we have grandma and grandpa are in Indiana, and they want to watch little Joey play a baseball game or a soccer game. They'll be able to live stream that game from wherever they're at. And that was one of the things that really caught my eye when I first went to the Wide World of Sports at ESPN at Disney World. Was I'm sitting in a restaurant, and a team comes in and they say, hey, can you give us a replay on field 7? And they could sit there and have dinner. They could watch their little baseball game or whatever it was. And so that was something we wanted to do here, but also some of the latest technology in scoreboards and wayfinders, things like that, and how we just keep people up to date. You'll be able to be sitting at a volleyball game, order a soda on your phone, boom, somebody can bring it. You can either go pick it up or somebody will bring it to you. So just a lot of I think conveniences. But what we've really built here is given people the ability to play multiple games and not leave the facility. So many times on a soccer weekend, you got a soccer tournament, you got a game in the morning, you got a game in the afternoon. What do you do in that 2-3 hour period in between? Now you have a place to go eat. You got a place to relax. You got a place where you can send the kiddos to just, go to the esports gaming area and or video arcade and rip off some of that steam in between games. But also now, where can I go take care of my body? Where can I go do recovery? And so it's one-stop shop, everything under one roof. And that was really the vision of Legacy. In the Performance Center, though, my original idea was to, run this Performance Center like a college weight room. And it wasn't shortly after I met Spencer that I realized, well, that's the wrong vision. And he's put together a vision that I think is really cutting edge and different than anything else out there.
Yeah. And I presume that's what we alluded to pre-recording of the talent identification versus the development model. Do you want to give us the background on that, Spencer? I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I mean, what we really look at is it needs to align with the athlete, right? We're strong believers in optimizing human performance in life and sport, and that has to be the way the world we're living in, and especially COVID and the accelerator. Like, you can no longer just have a nice facility. You can no longer just have you can't have a bike and a treadmill and shiny weights and call that performance facility, right? It has to be connected. It has to be an experience they want to give them. That's one of the things that we really focus on, and Dan and I really aligned on, was it has to be experienced on the developmental side. So we're talking about under the age of 13. If you look at our whole system, one of our codes in our coding system is long-term athletic development model for Bali, the Canadians and the Russians that have done it for years. But we put that into our system. And so, we put together, in the beginning is teach them how to train, how to squat, how to use their body, how to create body awareness, how to skip, how to hop, and make that game based. And then as they develop, making to learn to train, then train to compete. Now we're in the high school level. Now we get into the talent identification model that then we can start saying, okay, now let's see, where do you rank? Where do you sit, to get to where you want to go and align that. And they're doing the same thing on the fitness side. The fitness side, really bridging that gap between medical and health and performance and health and medical and performance training. So it all has to work together in one cohesive model from, having the client understand where they're at, what do they need to be doing, what is their pathway, and using technology, but it has to work. And Eric, you and I have talked about this a lot, is that it has to work and it has to have a great user experience. And the three things that we focus on: it has to be mobile, it has to be individualized, and it has to be instant. Those three things that we always look at in our technology thing, and does it work and is the science aligned? And that's one of the things we really focus on, is to create this united experience you can have the workout in the best place you can be, and that's in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. So to dive into that a little bit deeper, Spencer, is when you look at, talent identification versus development model, how's it been done traditionally, and where do you think that is flawed?
Well, if you go back to the 70s, it was done right. We played a lot of sports, we climbed trees, we rode bikes. We created games outside, played home run derby over the house. That was developmental, right? And now we've gotten into it because the Tiger Woods generation and the Tiger parents and the specialization and tennis and golf, really those individual sports have really corrupted that we specialize so young and so early that we reduce resiliency and sustainability, and they're only good at one thing, and that doesn't work, and they're done. That's why we have this high injury rate, right? It's one of the things that causes injury is repetitive patterns done over and over again. And so be able to create that variation developmental model and really work in them, just like a martial arts approach, like striking with an object, without an object, getting on and off the ground, like a get up, but making it all into where it's a game based, and there's incentives and markers to show we're developing, but we're not trying to rank and score. And we're just trying to show we're really focused on participation. If you think about this, let's just take the sport of soccer. If you can't dribble, you're probably going to quit the sport. You can't run linear, you're probably going to quit the sport. If you can't change directions, you're probably going to quit the sport. If you can't, you're probably going to quit the sport. So let's can do those basics really well. And then we can start talking about how far or how fast, or, what's the power output, what's their VO2, or, the technical skill sets. And so that's the developmental model. And then the performance, now we're really going to focus on where the links are missing, and then how can we boost the system.
Yeah. Have you guys, I presume you guys are familiar with David Epstein's book, Range. Have you guys read that one? I mean, Dan, you may even be in the book. I don't know, but it's like, like I think about that.
They did talk about Federer and Tiger, right?
Yeah. And Wayne Gretzky and all these people who, had this wide range of athletics, and they're all, like what I found it was interesting too, similar to like Dan's story, was that kind of slow to learn, right? Like it seems the obvious comments, like, Wayne Gretzky played a ton of stuff. And I don't think he really got like committed to hockey until like maybe his late teens or early 20s even. And then obviously we know how that story ended, right? And there's so many different ones. Go ahead.
Yeah, this wide range of neuro learning, right? So it just wasn't just that in that technical skill set, right? So he knew how to create rotational power. He knew how to create alactic power and all the things we talk about from a physiological standpoint. He just hadn't really done it specifically for the sport of hockey. And that's the same thing with Roger Federer, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I ever remember, so I had the people from Brand X Method who are, on a similar mission with today's youth. Is like, hey, let's not get sports specific too early. It's at a detriment to our youth. But I'm like, I don't know if I can say this anymore, but the game butts up, right? I used to play the game butts up against the boards, tennis ball. All you had was like 3 kids, a tennis ball, and that was it. And I think about all the things I learned from that game, like quickness to speed to one-handed throwing and agility and, competitiveness and all these things that I got from a single game that wasn't organized. There was no organized, there was no parents, there was no anything. It was just unsupervised fun that probably taught me more about athletics than, most of the things that were in a structured environment. So there's a lot to be learned from there. And I, anecdotally, I was on one of the last days of the ski season last year. I was on a chairlift with a couple of 13-year-old kids, right? Boys. And they were talking about what they had planned for the spring and summer. And I was like, these kids are leaving the house at 6 and not getting back till 7. I was like, that is, and it's full. Like that wasn't me at 13 or 14. I was like, had 4 hours of maybe structured stuff. And then I was just kind of screwing off with my friends and doing whatever. Right. And that seems to be something else where, anyway, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on, what else can we be doing, right, for the youth to make them just more resilient and more successful really in sport down the road?
Well, we talk about the old model, and I come from that old model. And, one thing that I just encounter over and over again. And so when I first moved to Arizona, I had a John Frappier acceleration program. And I don't know if you remember who John Frappier was, but it was Frappier Acceleration. He's a guy from North Dakota. But he developed this high-speed training program on these big treadmills, and the treadmills could go up to 30 miles an hour. And I love the training, just the elevation up, elevation down, and they provide you with the whole workout manual and everything. And I started training, just people. And I got so many parents that would walk through the door and say, look, my son is 12. He's a great baseball player, but he just isn't a very good runner. And to start teaching somebody running at the age of 12 is difficult because they've been playing sports for 4 years already. That's the first thing we should be teaching our kids how to do. I remember doing a track camp one time when I was in France, and there were 3rd graders and 2nd graders that knew how to hurdle correctly. And that just blew my mind. It's like, oh my gosh, they're so far ahead of us developmentally. So I think what happens in this country is we teach our kids how to shoot a basketball and throw a football and, play these other sports, hit a baseball, pitch a baseball, without teaching them the fundamentals of athletics, the fundamentals of development. And I like, that's one of the things that I really appreciated about Spencer is, his model creates that up front. We're gonna get you to understand movement, and then you bring it over to the fitness side as well. So, you talk about the old model, man. That the old model. If we want our kids to last in the sport, if we want our kids to be as good as, quote, our parents as we want them to be, we need to kind of go away from that specialization just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you see it with Dan, right? Like, guy who's number one in the world. I'm honestly with number one in the world golfer named John Rahm, who we work with, who grew up in a developmental model, right? Like, he played golf 2 times a week, 30 minutes growing up. And the only other time he really played golf after that was on the weekends when he had to drive 2 hours to go play on a Saturday and drive back. And then he played soccer, he played highlight, he was a kayaker. He did all these other different sports. And that's why, like, when you have a guy like Dan, you have a guy like John, you have a guy like Wayne Gretzky or Federer, right? Their ability to learn technical skills is they can learn it so fast because they have this neurodevelopment that if they only learn one pattern, how to do rotational pattern, like in a golf swing or a hockey slap shot or tennis, that when you ask them to hit it from different slots and different angles, they struggle, right? That's where you see a guy like Kyler Murray right now, who's 5'8", played for the Cardinals, tearing up the NFL because he can hit his arm slide in all kinds of different angles and maneuver his body and hit these different things. Same with Patrick Mahomes. Like, there's a slow developer, a guy who was unknown, went to Texas Tech, now he's the best quarterback and highest paid person in the National Football League, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it brings me back to, and I have to give him credit. Bill Thompson was my age group swimming coach out of Santa Clara Swim Club when I was growing up. And he hit me with this one line that stuck to me. I was probably like 9. Right. And I remember I was talking to him like, well, I'm thinking about starting water polo, right? Because that's the sport that I played for 20 something years. But he's like, Eric, you know, there's swimmers and then there's athletes that swim. And then he like kind of broke that down, what that meant, you know, and basically he was encouraging me to go do a bunch of stuff. Right. And become an athlete. And if I come back to swimming and I enjoy it, then I have that background. Now, what to me was shocking, you get an insert, there's football players and then there's athletes who play football, right? Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray. That's the sport they picked. And I think what we want is probably development more of general athletics, right? Is that what we're shooting for here?
Correct. Yeah. General athletics. And then we get to specialization, right? Yeah. Like that's what we look at. And I think one of the things that we're also trying to do is be able to prove that through a systematic approach and using technology to help quantify our decision-making process and be able to visually show people. Because that's one thing we've seen. Once we take into this concept or these ideas, and whether we talk about it, we drew it on the whiteboard, whatever, but once you show them in a data visualization and be able to capture that effectively and efficiently and show them key performance markers that you're doing, just like you'd run a business, then they'd be like, I got it. Right. And you have to not only educate the athlete, but you have to educate the parent and you have to educate the coaches, because a lot of times we see these coaches, they think they need to crush, kill, die. And they didn't crush, kill, die. They didn't get better. I'm like, well, what's the intent? Let's go back to that. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to know? What do you want to measure? What do you want to get better at? If it is, then that's not it. Or let's measure it. Let's see. Let's use your method. Let's use my method. Let's see who wins.
Yeah, right on. I love it. Well, I know you guys are busy guys. I want to respect your time. So I just want to make sure we get a couple minutes to kind of describe. Let's see. Today's recording day is October 26, 2021. It's 2021, right? Is that the year we're in?
Crazy.
I feel like it's been a little while.
I think so. Yeah. This morning I was writing 19. So
yeah, on my checks. Yeah. When is this thing going to open? And then second question is, from, a spirit of collaboration, people listen to this podcast. There's a lot of people who are in the fitness and performance industries who, may want to get involved or help or in some way. So when is this thing opening and what do you guys need right now?
Well, we're opening after the first of the year. We got a grand opening scheduled for January 7th, but we do have events that are going to be starting in December. We have soccer tournaments, pickleball tournaments. So even before maybe everything is completely done on the interiors, we're going to be playing sports on the outside of this. And so just first quarter, January 2022, Legacy Sports Park, Bell Bank Park will be open for business.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
what do you guys need?
I think what we need is we're trying to find great people, right? Because we know we can find great people and people who want to grow, want to develop, and want to be a part of a team that we can innovate and really deliver a unique experience I don't think the world has seen before. So if those people are out there and they're looking to be a part of get in on a ground level and be a part of something really innovative and be around a dynamic team, then hit us up. We're looking for you.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you. Spencer, thanks for coming back on. Daniel, Brien, man, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I could ask you questions all day, but I have to keep this under an hour. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, you guys, thank you so much. That's a wrap. One last question is if people want to get a hold of you guys or you want to send them somewhere online, where are you sending them?
Well, people can find us. People can find me on the legacysportsusa.com website, or they can email me directly, danob@legacysportsusa.com. And Spencer,
you can find us there or thp.fit, and my email is spencer@thp.fit, and so is our Instagram. So if you want to find out some stuff about THP, you can check us on our IG at thp.fit, and we're always posted, and we have a full content strategy, and we got some other interesting products coming on, Eric. Hang tight.
I will. You and I talk frequently enough, so I'll keep updated. That's for sure. Awesome. Well, you guys, that's a wrap. Ladies and gentlemen, Spencer Tatum, Dano Brien, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.